The cargo hold reeked of ammonia and despair. Lena pressed her sleeve against her nose, her boots crunching over scattered scales and filth as she descended into the belly of the crashed smuggler's ship. The distress beacon had drawn her across 3 kilometers of her farmland, past the scorched crater where the vessel had torn through her wheat fields like a meteor of greed and cruelty. She'd expected salvage. Perhaps medicine or fuel cells she could trade at the colony outpost. What she found instead made her stomach turn. Dragon hatchlings. Dozens of them. Stacked in cages barely larger than shipping crates. Their iridescent scales dulled by malnutrition and fear. Some whimpered, a sound like wind through broken glass. Others lay motionless, their rib cages rising and falling in shallow, desperate rhythms. The Galactic Council had declared dragons an endangered species 3 cycles ago. Their bones fetched fortunes on black markets across 7 systems. Their scales made impenetrable armor. Their hearts, when consumed, supposedly granted extended lifespans to the wealthy and morally bankrupt. Lena had seen the holovids, knew the statistics, but numbers on a screen couldn't prepare her for this, for the weight of dozens of dying eyes turned toward her, reflecting the emergency lighting in fractured rainbows. "Easy," she whispered, approaching the nearest cage. Inside, a hatchling no larger than her forearm lifted its head. Its eyes, deep amber flecked with gold, held an intelligence that pierced through her. Despite its weakened state, something in its gaze commanded respect. "Arix," the creature croaked, its voice scraping through her mind more than her ears. Telepathy. She'd read that dragons possessed it, but experiencing the raw intimacy of another consciousness brushing against hers made her stagger. "Your name?" Lena asked softly. The hatchling Arix inclined his head a fraction. "The eldest. 37 siblings, all dying." Lena's jaw tightened. The rational part of her brain cataloged the impossibility. She was one human woman on a frontier farm, barely scraping by after the colony's 3rd failed harvest. She had no resources for this. No expertise. The authorities were 4 days away by fastest shuttle, and most of these hatchlings wouldn't survive 4 hours. Doing nothing meant watching them die. Doing something meant risking everything she'd built. She thought of her grandfather, who'd told her stories of old Earth, of humans who'd faced extinction and clawed their way back through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Of farmers who'd fed entire cities with nothing but dirt and determination. "We're going to need a bigger barn," Lena muttered. The next 6 hours blurred into organized chaos. Lena hauled hatchlings 3 at a time to her transport sled, cushioning them with emergency thermal blankets from the crashed ship's survival supplies. Her back screamed. Her shoulders burned. She ignored both. By the time binary suns breached the horizon, she'd converted her entire grain storage facility into a makeshift dragon nursery. Every heat lamp she owned blazed at full power. She'd drained her emergency water reserves into makeshift pools, adding mineral supplements meant for her livestock. But water and warmth weren't enough. Dragons were carnivores, and she'd just inherited 37 starving apex predators. Lena stood in her barn, surrounded by weak chirps and labored breathing, and made a decision that would bankrupt her. She activated her comm unit. "This is Lena Castellan, Farm Plot 77 Alpha. I need to place an emergency order. All the protein rations you can spare. All of them." "Yes, I understand the cost. No, I don't care about payment plans. Just get them here now." The colony quartermaster sputtered. "Ma'am, that's 3 months' worth of supplies. Your credit will be my problem. Those hatchlings are dying now." She cut the transmission before he could argue further. Arix watched from the largest pool, his head resting on the rim. "Why?" The question resonated through her mind, heavy with confusion. "We are not your species. Not your responsibility." Lena knelt beside him, meeting those ancient young eyes. "On Earth, my homeworld, we had a saying. We do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because doing the impossible is what humans do best." She smiled grimly. "Besides, you're on my land now. That makes you my responsibility." The protein shipment arrived at noon. Lena worked through the afternoon and into the night, hand-feeding the weakest hatchlings, cleaning wounds, administering makeshift antibiotics from her veterinary supplies. Her hands shook with exhaustion. She ignored them too. By the 3rd day, the first hatchling, a small emerald female, managed to stand without assistance. By the 5th day, Eric's could unfold his wings, revealing membranes that shimmered like captured starlight despite their malnutrition. Word spread. The colony authorities finally arrived on the 7th day, accompanied by a Galactic Council xenobiologist who stared at Lena's operation with undisguised shock. Impossible, the xenobiologist breathed, a crystalline being whose translator rendered their awe in flat mechanical tones. These specimens should have perished. Their survival rate in captivity, even under optimal conditions, rarely exceeds 12%. You've saved all of them? 36, Lena corrected, her voice hoarse. One hadn't made it. She'd buried the hatchling under the oak tree where her grandfather rested. Close enough. The xenobiologist approached Eric's, who'd grown noticeably larger, his scales regaining their prismatic brilliance. Extraordinary. And their social bonding with you. Unprecedented. Eric's consciousness brushed against Lena's mind, warm now, suffused with something she recognized as gratitude. The human demonstrated what her species calls humanity. We dragons have long memories. This debt will not be forgotten. Lena scratched behind his eye ridge, earning a rumbling purr that vibrated through her bones. No debt. Just doing what needed doing. The council offered compensation. Enough to rebuild her farm 3 times over and establish a proper dragon rehabilitation center. They offered accolades, media attention, a medal commemorating her courage. Lena accepted the credits. Refused everything else. As the council officials departed with the hatchlings, bound for a sanctuary world where dragons thrived, Eric's lingered at the transport ramp. His wings, now fully extended, cast shadows across the farmyard like promises of future thunder. You taught us that humans do not yield to impossibility, he projected, his mental voice resonant with dawning maturity. We will remember. When your species faces its own impossibilities, when the galaxy forgets what humans can achieve, we will remember. Lena watched them go. Watched 36 dragons take flight for the first time in their young lives, spiraling upward until they vanished into the clouds. Then she turned back to her ruined wheat fields, her depleted supplies, her mountain of debt, and she smiled. Impossible just meant it would take longer.